Welcome, everybody. This is a workshop on using SoTL research to inform your teaching. So SoTL stands for the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. My name is Jackie Dang. I'm an educational developer at the Center for Excellence Learning and Teaching at Toronto Metropolitan University. I go by he, him pronouns, and this is part of a workshop series on SoTL that we've been facilitating over the past few months. And so if this is if this is a repeat workshop or not the repeat workshop, if this is not your first time in this part of the series or attending a workshop in this series, welcome back. If this is your first time, no worries at all. Welcome. I'm happy you showed up. There will be some opportunities for me to sort of like get everyone caught up to speed on some of the past content in this series. And yeah, so this is really open to anyone who's interested in SoTL, who wants to sort of get started on SoTL, or if you're experienced in SoTL, hopefully there's some useful tidbits in here as well. I like to keep things fairly conversational and dialogical, so if you ever have any questions or you want me to clarify anything, feel free to throw something in the chat or raise your hand, and I'll do my best to get to your question or comment. And on that note, any questions before we go on or start the workshop? Any thoughts? No? Okay. So we are meeting today on the Dish with One Spoon territory, which is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee. This is a treaty that bound these peoples to share the territory and protect the land in which I live and work, and many of you likely live and work on as well. We all come onto this land, and into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. And so I do want to make sure that we acknowledge that. There's some resources at the bottom of this slide in particular on Indigenous knowledge and learning at TMU. So there's nativeland.ca, which is a resource that helps you identify which people's land you live and work on. The Yellowhead Institute at TMU, the Standing Strong Task Force, and then TMU's webpage on Indigenous communities and peoples at our institution. If you're part of the Excellence in Teaching program, this is a workshop that counts towards that program. And if you're not part of the ETP, this is my chance to sell you on it. So the ETP is a program at the Center for Excellence Learning and Teaching that's designed to provide you, faculty and contract lecturers, with opportunities to enhance the impact of your teaching and participate in the community of educators committed to excellence in teaching and learning. So through the ETP, you'll get a chance to design and redesign courses and learning experiences, collaborate with colleagues and center staff, receive recognition for professional development in teaching, and participate in a supportive community of educators and mentors. There are some people in this call right now who I know are part of the ETP, and so hopefully they're having a good time. But if you have any questions, you're also welcome to reach out to me, and I can connect you with the person who runs that program, M. Doherty. It's a great program. It's really flexible, and I think it's fairly comprehensive. Essentially, you go through different professional development opportunities related to teaching, including some of these workshops, and you get a chance to work with us more closely at the center to enhance your teaching and enhance your courses. So I'll throw a link to the ETP if folks want to learn more in the chat as well. My name's Jackie. Like I mentioned, I'm an educational developer here at the Center for Excellence Learning and Teaching, so the CELT. I specialize in program evaluation and SoTL, and so my goal of this series is to really sort of get people caught up to speed on what SoTL is and to support them in developing projects related to develop their own SoTL projects and to evaluate their teaching more rigorously and effectively. Prior to my time at TMU, I've been involved in some projects focused on improving and studying equity, diversity, and inclusion, so EDI in science education and research, and I currently serve as an associate editor for the Canadian Journal for the Scholarship for Teaching and Learning, so CanJSOTL, which I'll talk about in this presentation. If you ever want to have a conversation with me, I'm always open to that, so feel free to reach out to me via email. It's jackiedang@torontomu.ca. SoTL. What is SoTL? So this is the quick refresher slide that I mentioned. SoTL projects. So again, SoTL stands for the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. And SoTL projects are really guided by these six principles. So SoTL projects focus on improving student learning and educational experiences. They involve students as partners in inquiry and learning. They're guided by questions that are grounded in local context and current knowledge. They're conducted using sound and ethical methods. Um, from SoTL projects, you share your findings with others, both researchers and educators. And they also include a clearly defined research lens. At its core, I think the simplest way I can put SoTL is that you're essentially teaching your classroom as if it were a laboratory or a place to experiment and innovate and get a sense of what's working and what's not. You're using your teaching as a way to as a way to sort of see what you're using your classroom as a way to see what works for your students and what might not work. And so this is a nice graphic from the Taylor Institute for Teaching and Learning, the University of Calgary, that sort of shows how SoTL aims to improve educational experiences. It's grounded through an equity, diversity, and inclusion and accessibility lens. And there's these four tenets: student partnership, local context, ethically grounded, and shared learning is shared. What you learn from the projects is shared. Any questions about that before we continue on? I know that these principles themselves are fairly abstract, and so I'm hoping that some of the coming slides will put things into more concrete terms for folks. All right. So today we're going to be talking about exploring resources to learn about SoTL and evidence-based approaches to teaching. We're going to talk about ways to begin embedding SoTL into your teaching and scholarly practice, and I'll talk about ways in which many of you may already be doing that and sort of building on what you already do in your classroom. And then we'll begin identifying and expanding our SoTL community here at TMU. So SoTL, I would say, is sort of um, one way to sort of think about evidence-based teaching. And what I mean by evidence-based teaching is you're using data, feedback, observational data, any sort of data that you can sort of draw on to guide how you teach and what you teach in your classroom. So this could be evidence from the literature. So that would be existing research articles on, best practices in teaching and learning, as well as evidence from your classroom. And the overlap of these two, I guess this dichotomous view of evidence is what we call evidence-based teaching. So it's synthesizing what's been shown to be useful in the literature with what you find to be useful for your specific context and classroom, and synthesizing those two things to guide your approach to teaching. So we'll be using this framework to sort of organize our discussion today. So I'll dive into some evidence from the literature and some sources and resources to help with that part. The first thing I'll quickly plug is, I guess, one quick resource to learn more about SoTL and to learn about ways to incorporate SoTL into your teaching is the workshop series that we've been doing these past few months. And so, again, you can scan this QR code and it will take you to a copy of all these slides, including this slide deck today. But the workshops that we've done so far this year have been an introduction to the scholarship of teaching and learning, qualitative methods in SoTL. Sorry, I went the wrong way. Intro to SoTL, designing impactful SoTL research questions and methods, qualitative methods in SoTL, so things like interviews and focus groups. And then you can't see this one, but quantitative methods in SoTL, so surveys and questionnaires. Sherry, your question in the chat. Can only view the slides, so I cannot make a copy. Is it possible I get access to make a copy? Yes, I can do that maybe near the end of the presentation. That's okay, Sherry. I'm not sure. Okay, sounds good. Sorry about that. SoTL is it's a relatively new field of research and inquiry, but there are a lot of different types of journals that talk about SoTL, and I would say SoTL adjacent topics. So there's the Canadian Journal for the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, which is sort of the premier journal on SoTL in Canada. In the US, there's Teaching and Learning Inquiry, which is a part of the iSoTL network. in the US, and so that's their journal down there in the US. Um, there are also what I would call more discipline-based educational research journals. And so these are educational research journals um, that are grounded within specific disciplines. And so there's the Journal of Engineering Education. My background's in chemistry. And so a lot of the work that I've published has been in the Journal of Chemical Education. Um, there are many different journals like this. And so specific to your discipline, if you're curious, I'd encourage you to check out this research guide at the University of Saskatchewan that sort of shows the different or has a list of many different SoTL journals, including many discipline-based educational research journals. Again, I'll throw this in the chat for folks. Peter, I see your comments. I can't see this workshop on the D2L show. All the other workshops are there. This one will be added. Yeah, I believe it's just because I just finished the slides. So it will be added afterwards. Yeah, but in the meantime, you can access the slides, at least from a view-only version of the slides using the link I put in the chat there. Okay. Our center also has a list of teaching strategies, a whole webpage actually of teaching strategies that are guided by SoTL research. And so this is just a screenshot of that page. And so active learning, case methods, classroom management, debate in the classroom. So this is, I think, a great way to sort of get ideas flowing about what you might try in your classroom, and maybe what you try becomes a broader SoTL project in your own scholarship. So again, I will throw this in the chat if folks are interested. Yeah, and if you expand some of these accordions, these tabs, you'll get access to a bunch of resources specific to each of these strategies as well. And so those are some resources. Again, I didn't really want to spend this entire presentation going through specific journal articles or journals themselves, but those are some resources that get you started on, I guess, exploring the literature on SoTL. One thing I do want to note is that research only gives us so much when it comes to teaching, right? Teaching is a very dynamic and contextual practice. I think this quote I'm about to share from Weimer really speaks to this idea. You ask a question in class and get no verbal response. What you see are enigmatic messages, and they're quoting Eisner from 1983 here, on students' faces and in their posture. You try to figure out what's going on. Was the question unclear? Was it too hard? And almost simultaneously, you start trying to figure out what to do. And it's at this point the research gains relevance. The research offers guidelines. We know things about wait time and about nonverbal immediacy, but what we don't know, what we know doesn't prescribe the necessary action, but it does give us options. And I think that's what research is really good at. It gives you a sense of, why students might be engaging with you in the ways that they're engaging with you, or what strategies might be useful within your teaching. So it gives you options. But we can't stand in front of the class, formulate hypotheses, run through possible theories, and thoughtfully decide on the course of action. The teacher has to act. It's not that the theories and research are irrelevant, just that, as Eisner points out, to quote, they are more in the background than the forefront of the action. So I think as much as we want to, rely on the research, we also have to keep in mind that our context and our students are unique, and that we really need to sort of put our own practice and our own thinking about teaching at the forefront of our classrooms. And that brings us to the second part of this workshop, which is exploring ways to begin embedding SoTL into your own teaching and scholarly practice. Before I move on, any questions? I'll pause for any questions. Maybe as I pause, I will quickly try and you know what? I'll do that later. No questions? Okay. So let's move on. We'll dive into how we might collect evidence from your own classroom. So every SoTL project will sort of fill up this cycle as we go through the next few slides. Every SoTL project begins with a question about student learning, and using that question to implement some sort of innovation or intervention in your classroom. And so some examples that I've come up with could be questions about what works. So it could be a question of like, I might have this question or thoughts about whether weekly quizzes improve students' understanding of key concepts in science courses compared to a midterm only assessment structure. And so my question here focuses on whether my innovation or my intervention about weekly quizzes is actually helping students. They could also focus on why specific approaches work and how they work. And so maybe a branching question from this first one would be, why do weekly quizzes lead to improved understanding? Each of these questions could have very different methodological approaches, but the important thing here is that they're questions and that they focus on student learning, which is core to SoTL. So as an example, do weekly quizzes lead to improved understanding? The intervention would be implementing these weekly quizzes. The next step would be to begin conducting some research and analysis after implementing that strategy. And this is where we get into different types of SoTL research methods. And so if you've been to some of the previous workshops, this will be a quick refresher. In SoTL, there are these three categories, really two, but you'll see in a sec that they are three distinct ones. And so the first are quantitative approaches. And so these are testing and examining relationships between specific numerical variables. The goal of quantitative approaches to SoTL are that you're aiming to get a lot of breadth and instead of depth. And so you're trying to get a sense of sort of the broader population's perspective on how things are going in your teaching and learning. An example of a quantitative method would be administering a questionnaire to your class. There are qualitative approaches, and so these aim to explore people's underlying experiences, behaviors, beliefs, and so here you're focusing on depth and not too concerned about the breadth. And an example of this would be interviews or focus groups with students in your class. There are also mixed methods approaches, and so mixed methods are methods that draw on both methods, so both quantitative and qualitative, to enrich and deepen understanding of a particular phenomenon. And so you're trying to get at both breadth and depth here. The challenge with mixed methods is obviously you're sort of having to do two things at once. And so it takes sometimes a bit more time and a bit more resources, but you do get at the pros of both approaches by employing both. So an example of this, here's an example research question. How does an in-class case study activity impact students' motivation levels? And so a quantitative approach to this question might be administering an in-class questionnaire to probe students' motivation levels before and after the in-class case study activity. Qualitative approach could be interviews with 10 students about how the case study activity impacted their motivation. And so the quantitative approach you're collecting, gives you a chance to collect more responses. Maybe you're going to do some stats on the data to get a sense of what's working before and after, or how things are changing before and after. Qualitative, you're talking to 10 students and really getting an in-depth, getting in-depth insights into their experience with the activity. Mixed methods, maybe part one would be the quantitative questionnaire, and then part two would be to do some interviews after the questionnaire that are sort of based on the responses that you get from the questionnaire data. Any questions about this so far? Okay. All right. So from there, we had our research question, we had our intervention, we did some research. So we compared student performance with and then without weekly quizzes as an example. And in this example, I'm engaging in the quantitative analysis. Does anyone know what the last step is in this process? So after we've done the analysis, we've uncovered something interesting. What's the last step? Oh, jeez, sorry. Dirk says share. Does anyone disagree with Dirk? Or have an alternative? Yeah, Benisha's interpretation of data. Yep, that's also something that we should mention, like reflecting on the data and using it to sort of inform your own practice and your teaching. The reason I wanted to point this out is because on that cycle that I've been sort of walking us through, many of you may already be engaged in parts of the SoTL cycle, right? You may already be engaged in scholarly teaching by trying something new or unique in your classroom, perhaps guided by others' research or attending some of these workshops that we offer at the CELT and using that to sort of inform how you approach your teaching um, and then you may also, by trying something new, collect feedback on your teaching through a questionnaire, conversations with students, observations. And so you may already be gathering data. And then you may be using that feedback to refine your teaching. And so many of us may already be engaged in scholarly teaching. What distinguishes scholarly teaching from the scholarship of teaching and learning, or one thing that distinguishes these two terms, is sharing what we learned with our community. So many of us are likely not sharing what we learn and find with our community. And this is what really distinguishes scholarly teaching from the scholarship of teaching and learning. It doesn't become scholarship until you begin to share it with others. And so the last stage is refining your teaching from what you found in your investigation and then sharing what you found with others so that people can build on your work, reinforce it, implement it themselves, etc. And so this takes us to the last part of our workshop today. But before I move on, any questions or comments about anything we've talked about so far? Yeah, okay. Thanks for participating, folks. I appreciate it. All right, so I'm just gonna, this last section will really just be an opportunity for me to talk about many of the different things that we're offering at the center and also beyond when it comes to building and finding other folks who are interested in SoTL. There is the TMU Learning and Teaching Conference on May 20th this year. And this is an opportunity for you to learn and engage with other folks interested in SoTL at TMU. It's also an opportunity for you to share your work. I think unfortunately, the abstract deadline has passed, the proposal deadline has passed, but it is an opportunity for folks, if you're interested, to hear about many of the great teaching innovations that are happening at TMU. So that's one platform or one event that might interest you. There will be presentations, workshops, and panel discussions with leaders in SoTL at TMU. And I have a link to the registration form if anyone is interested. The other thing I'll plug is SoTL Canada. So this is an organization that's part of the Society for Teaching and Learning in Higher Education, which is sort of a national organization, professional organization that seeks to enhance teaching and learning in higher education across Canada. SoTL Canada specifically aims to support a community of scholars that allows them to share resources, research, and solve SoTL-related challenges, share and promote diverse ways to disseminate teaching and learning scholarship, work together to strengthen SoTL culture at various institutional and global levels, provide mentorship and resources for those seeking SoTL supports, and advocate for the value of SoTL in improving post-secondary student learning. They have several initiatives that you can find on their website. And so some of these include things like writing groups, where if you're interested in, writing your first SoTL paper from something that you've done in your classroom, there are writing groups to support you in doing that from folks who are, expert SoTL scholars who have been doing this for decades, as well as folks who are brand new to SoTL and just want to, connect with a new community. So I've put their website in the chat if anyone wants to take a look there. But it's a great place to sort of start building interinstitutional connections related to SoTL. Building on this, we are also trying mightily to enhance the SoTL offerings that we have at the center. And one of the things that we've been doing is bringing in 3M National Teaching Fellows. And so 3M National Teaching Fellows are these renowned SoTL scholars in Canada. And so These are individuals who have spent a majority of their careers dedicated to um, enhancing teaching and learning in higher education, and that includes some of the SoTL work. Um, this past month, we had a 3M National Teaching Fellow from the University of Prince Edward Island, Libby Osgood, come to give a talk on her work. In May, we'll be hosting Professor Allison Flynn, who just so happens to be my former graduate supervisor. And so if folks are around that week or that day, it'd be great to see you at this session. Dr. Flynn is going to be presenting some of her work on equipping students for success through research and practice, inclusive professional development, learning opportunities, and chemistry education. So it's a great way to I know these workshops have sort of been more about the basics of SoTL, but I think we're hoping to have more opportunities like this in the future where we're bringing people in who are doing SoTL and giving you a chance to sort of connect with those folks one-on-one. So another link in the chat for you to register for Allison's seminar. Here at TMU, what I'm hoping that we can do more of is have more conversations about SoTL. And so I've created this Google space, if anyone wants to join that. And this is really a space for us to continue the conversations that we've been having about SoTL from these workshops. And so if anyone is interested in continuing on this conversation virtually, and maybe in person or through more regular meeting times in the future, I've set up this space for us to continue meeting and conversating with each other. It's also a quick and easy way to talk to me. So if you have any questions about SoTL that you want to share with me or share with others in our community, our growing community, I've created this space for us. Again, that link is in the chat too. Sorry, lots of links right now. I apologize if it's a link overload. I guess building on that, if you do want to chat with me or anyone from my team, there is an entire webpage where you can connect with us and send us a consultation request. You can also just email us if that's easier for you. I've put the link to that in the chat. You also, again, are more than welcome to reach out to me directly. If you ever have any questions about SoTL, I'm the person to ask at the center. So happy to chat. The last thing I'll quickly share is I've created this feedback form for the workshop series specifically. So if you've come to this workshop today, or if you've been to multiple workshops throughout the series, I would really, really appreciate your feedback. This is the first time we're doing this. And so always open to hearing how things went, what we might improve on in the future. There are also some questions about what you would like from at TMU specifically, or sorry, TMU more broadly when it comes to SoTL. So that'll be a way for you to sort of share your perspective anonymously. And that is also in the chat if you want to fill that out. Otherwise, that is it for me, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thanks for sticking around till the end.